Good afternoon, Topic Mixer family. I hope you are having a wonderful day. I thought I'd just get on here for a few minutes and talk about Coming to America 2. I recently watched the film. I thought it was an excellent film. Okay, it was a good film. I'm not going to say excellent, but it was a good film. And I kind of wonder why the critics criticized the movie. There were some scenes that were a little odd to me, and I will talk about that as we go through this process. But um, all in all, Coming to America was a great movie. I loved the movie. We saw some familiar characters like Prince Hakeem, of course, King Jaffa, Simi, and there was a cast of new characters like Lavelle. Uh, Wesley Snipes' character was awesome. General Izzy, uh, so we got to see that. And it's funny because it's a couple years old and everybody looks a little bit old. It's been, what, 30 years? I can't believe I'm saying 30 years. But it's been about 30 or so years. And most of the cast looks pretty much the same. Maybe aged a little bit. Some of them a little bit more than others. But it's the same cast of characters for the most part. And, we're missing a couple that have passed away. God rest their soul. But it was awesome to see Sherry Headley, Lisa McDowell. Oh my God, she looks the same as she did when the movie came out. What? Anyway, let's say this. Let's talk about the basic plot of the movie. Um, so So Akeem finds out from his father that by law he has to have a male heir to his throne, even though his daughter has been coded or has been suited to become the leader. Uh, you find out that that's not enough; that they need a male heir. So lo and behold, his father's been keeping it from Jeffrey Jeffa. Been keeping it from. His father Jeffrey Jeffa has been keeping it from uh, Hakeem that he has a son in Queens, New York. I guess it was in fear that he would go back and try to retrieve the son and bring him back. He didn't want that. I don't know why. All of a sudden, this was. It seems like he was keeping tabs on the kid in New York, but he didn't allow that child to get to know who his father was because he was quote unquote a bastard. Again, a traditional issue in Samunda. So before Jeffrey dies, he's asking Hakeem to go to New York and retrieve his son and bring him back. So he does. He goes to New York. He retrieves his son. There's no big like chase scene or anything. It's kind of instantaneous. He goes to the old barbershop. The old barbershop tells him, "Hey, yeah, yo, yeah." He gets some information on the kid. He says, "Yeah, he usually hangs out in front of the Staples Center trying to get sell basketball tickets, that kind of thing." Um, there was no big deal there. He finds him. He talks to him. Here's where it gets kind of plastic. There's a little, tension. Like I don't know who you are. Instead of that normal, I don't know who you are kind of thing. It seems like he instantly took to the guy, took him to his parents. His mom, goes, "Hey, I know you," and said, "Hey, I want your son to come here because I need him to be my prince." Okay, that's one of those little plot holes that everybody talk about. One little bitty one. So then they go back to Samunda, and when they go back to Samunda, um, you see that all sorts of things are transpiring. Like the father is in transition of about and is about to die, uh, and so that's another odd scene. He's sitting in the casket, sitting up in the casket, listening to them talk about all the great things in his life. They bring in Glass Knight and the Pips. They bring in Salt and Pepper and all these other little groups. And it was weird to watch him sitting there, and they were basically talking about how great a king he was, and they bring up the fact that Hakeem does not have a male heir. Eh, that scene was odd. Let's just put it that way. So in the process, of course, Hakeem goes gets his male heir. His father dies during this scene where his father just turns to him and says, "I think I'm going to die now." Again, another oddball part of the plot, but and a very weird and I don't know how else to put it. It was a somber scene. It's just one of those things that you kind of like, ooh, I don't want to see that. Oh, it's not even funny. That's not nice at all. It's weird. Um, and so Hakeem begins to train Lavelle on being a prince because he has to have his male heir. You feel the conflict from that point on, and that's part of the movie that works. The conflict between Hakeem's daughters, his wife, and that set of kids, and Lavelle and his mother and that set, and you feel that conflict. You feel that conflict. You feel it. You feel it. You feel it. You feel it. Even to the point when everything starts getting where it works together, because a mistake is made early on. So when Lavelle is introduced as Prince, and at the time General Izzy shows up, he shows up. He says, "I've got a solution." He brings forth his daughter. Now, earlier in the movie, at the beginning, he brought forth his son to marry the daughter from Samunda, Hakeem's daughter from Samunda, and of course that was like an instant rejection. He said, "No, no, 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 no." But then when this happened, he allowed Lavelle to make that decision whether he wanted to marry this girl. Now, mind you, who they chose for this girl, by Tiana Taylor, hey, she's a good-looking young lady. They chose that one. Hakeem Lavelle was like starstruck, like, yeah, I'll marry her. Mistake number one. First sign he has no diplomatic capabilities whatsoever was when he made that mistake, and Hakeem was kind of an error with that one too because he was following tradition. He was just trying to get. He's like, I saw two problems with one. How you say problem two solve two problems with one stone. Well, he thought he had solved two problems with one stone. He actually caused two problems with one stone. But we'll get to that later. Okay, so as this plot goes on, Lavelle has to prove himself that he's the son, and he did. He pulled the hairs from, he was smart, and he found a way to pull the hairs from the lion's whiskers. But it actually was the sister who put this idea together, and he came along with the whiskers thing. That was his idea. Now, that was the son of Lavelle's idea. Well, every cat loves whiskers. Spread it all over the top. And that's what we call a shameless whiskers. Putting the food in there, in movies put shameless plugs in there, the McDonald's thing. It's actually not a conflict. There probably is the reason why they do it that way. But anyway, there were other little things that were in the movie. As the plot goes on, he's trying to learn to be Lavelle's trying to learn thing. Now, Lavelle's journey is important to the movie, but it's kind of like a side journey when you get to the end of it all. And I'll tell you why. While all of this is going on, of course, General Izzy is trying to plot and plan how he can best help his kingdom and his status. And that means that something's going on with him and Hakeem the whole time. Of course, Lavelle is not ready for that level of things. But the way General Izzy sees it, if Lavelle marries his daughter, he gets control when Hakeem is no longer king. Hakeem's always said he's ready for people trying to assassinate him. If you listen to the plot of the movie, they're going to assassinate me because I have no male heirs and yada, 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 yada. So he's worried about a lot of things during the course of the movie. So he makes several little mistakes. So, like, one is making Lavelle promising setting up this arranged marriage with Lavelle and the other girl from Izzo's camp. He also kind of, he pushes his daughters in the background. That's another mistake. It brings a rift between him and his wife by bringing the baby mama to Zamunda and putting her in the palace along with your wife. This is a real life situation kind of thing going on here. So now there's a rift between these two women who are like dynamically opposed, even though he's not with this woman. That was just his baby's mama, the woman he was with when he first was there. And you got this woman that's your wife that you are with. That brings a rift. Now, I want to talk about that conflict for a second because there's several little conflicts in here that go along. I'm not going to bring up a whole lot on these issues, but it's important to talk about the morality in the film because there's one big overlying issue in the film also. Okay, so in the family today, there's a lot of that happens. This really happens. There's men who've had men and women who have had relations with each other outside of marriage. Then they have children. Then later on, separately in their lives, they get married. Now they have these children, so they have to have a relationship with the child, the parent of that child, just because they have that child. So it can bring conflict with your marriage. See, it's a man of two minds. It's like your mind's being split off in two different directions. We kind of hear about this in the Bible about being double-minded. So here you are. This is your child. This is your child. The only thing that you have to focus on is the child. Don't worry about the baby mama. But there shouldn't be a conflict, and it can be because sometimes there's jealousy and other things that get in the way. Now, in this case, it wasn't jealousy, but it was a baby mama seeing opportunity, not only for her son but for herself, and a wife feeling that her space had been invaded. And guess whose fault that is? The one person who really didn't know what had happened in the first place, Hakeem. His choices were, and this is what you should never do in a relationship. You should never bring things that will invade that space of your relationship. Even if you have a child outside of that relationship, you may have to bring that child in. And this is if it was a previous relationship, because now cheating is a different story that could cause a problem. But you never want to cause anything that'll cause tension. So, unfortunately for that child, he is in the middle of whatever mess his parents created. And at the same time, the wife is in the middle of the mess that was created as well. It shouldn't be that way. So they all have to learn a way to get along in this little dynamic. And I don't want to get too deep into relationship things, but because of that, there's a lot of rift and a lot of tension that goes on. For one thing, there's one scene where baby mama goes in and takes a dress from Lisa, and wears her dress. Isn't that your dress? Don't you like it? I kind of had to add a little extra material. I thought it would be okay if I wore one of your dresses. It's that thing, like, now she's in my closet. That kind of thing. That's where the conflict crossed. It's like that tension that was crossed because of this. It's a catch-all tale. It's a real life tale. This happens every day. Unfortunately, there's a child there that has to be raised, and then there's a baby mother in this because somebody else created this mess. Like, two people got together, had a child, and created this mess. Wouldn't it be better if those two people had chosen not to make that mistake from the get-go? But in this case, it's a movie and it couldn't happen. But it wouldn't, because then, because these are two people, especially when you're young. And I'm talking to my young people. The decisions you make now will affect you the rest of your life. That person you're with now may not be the person you're with for the rest of your life. You may feel that way or think that way, but that's not the case. So, that being aside, we're going back to Coming to America. So, that leaves a tension in their house because, now you got the baby mama and the mama there. And meanwhile, there's an uncle back home who's upset because Lavelle done left to go with his father. This uncle had been acting as the father. Here comes another issue. He's been acting as the father the whole time. He's been the one that has been in Lavelle's life. So he's been teaching what he knows about his life from the world he lives in. You gotta learn how to hustle. And he's trying to teach Lavelle how to hustle, how to live on the streets in New York. He's selling tickets at the basketball game outside the game illegally. And Lavelle's like, I don't want to do that though. I want to get a real job. I want to do something different. A man becoming a man is when he finds his own path. So that's another part that we're growing into as this goes. So Lavelle does all these things to become the king. So we get to a point where eventually everything works out, or it seems to work out. So baby mama and wife learn to get along and they become happy and they were like becoming friends and everything and realize this conflict ain't really between you and me and this is all about a child that has nothing to do with us, yada yada yada, which they have to do in real life. You have to find that path that says, hey, this ain't about you, it's about that child. So we get to that point in the movie where everything just seems like it's going smooth. We got Lavelle here. Then all of a sudden, Lavelle makes one decision. He decides to suddenly grow up. He decides that I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. I want to make my own choice. Now, Uncle back home is happy because when Lavelle decides to go with the girl, the barber girl, the servant girl, and that's the girl he wants to be with, he takes him back to Queens. Here we go on the hero's journey. You've done everything you can to become this prince of Samunda, but you really give it all up for this one thing that you really want. This is the hero's journey. The ability to give up everything for what you really want is part of the hero's journey as well. So, this causes an instant rift. Of course, General Izzy, Wesley Snipes' character, is not happy at all because, hey, Lavelle's supposed to be marrying his daughter, and now he's not. And he's ran off to Queens. So now here comes a chance that this might start a war. Meanwhile, in his own bedroom, here goes Akeem, who's made this decision, like he's going to marry this girl. He's got to marry this girl. He has no choice. And then his wife's like, Ro, weren't you the king that went to America and decided that you didn't want to marry the wife that your daddy had, and you married the girl you wanted to marry? And in the same time, he caused a rift with his wife because then he goes, you cannot tell me that he instantly goes to the I am the man story. Well, I am the man gets put out the bedroom, door locked, he gonna have to find somewhere to sleep. He ends up sweeping at McDowell's. Another funny part of the plot. I will talk about the funny little bits in a minute. Ends up sweeping at McDowell's. So, big plot twist. He goes to New York. He looks for his son. He's going to bring his son back, but then he realizes while he's there, if this is who you want to marry, this is who you're going to marry. So while all of that's going on, his daughter back home resolves the whole thing between Izzy and the company, first beating them all up, and then putting them in a place where they have to negotiate, proving that she deserves that place at the table. In the end, everything's happy. Everybody's happy. Lavelle marries the girl. He's prince, but he's becoming a diplomat. His role has reduced from being king to something else. Meanwhile, little girl's setting herself up to be the queen when Hakeem leaves. So will there be a Coming to America 3? Maybe. It might be a good idea just to leave it right where it is. It was a great movie. I will say this for what it was, including the little plot holes that threw you off. Everything came together well at the end, though. I will say that. It worked out fine. Everybody was happy. It was a happy ending. Yay, yay, yay. Some other things I want to talk about. Stereotypes in the movie. Typical New York type street stereotypes. The kind that white people like to put on about black people. They were there. Also, African stereotypes were in the movie. Notice they were fighting with sticks, not guns, which has a twofold effect. This movie is kind of a family, even though it's PG-13, it's kind of a family movie. We'd rather not see guns in the movie. The relationship with elephants and animals in Africa, I don't really think Africans have that kind of relationship with them, but this is, again, a fantasy movie, so it is what it is. And that's another thing I want to talk about. Africa... the deep meanings in this is Africa is a wonderful, vibrant continent full of different kingdoms and countries and all those things. So there are real kingdoms and countries we could talk about. I would love to see more about that. We've got Wakanda and we've got Sumunda right now. Those are our fantasy worlds. And of course there are people bad critics, conservative white critics, bad conservative white critics, because not all conservative white critics are saying this, is, they created this fictional world to give black people hope. And I hate when people say stuff like that. When there's actually hope and there's real history there. I mean, like I said, there's Mali, there's Songhai, there's the great Zimbabwe, uh, Ghana, uh, there's the Nubian kingdoms, Ethiopia. There's a lot of history that I would like to see come alive on screen if a director sat down and worked on those films. Do the maybe hey, maybe I got the skills in me and we'll work on a movie about that. The great Mansa Musa, the richest man ever in the world. He bankrupted Egypt when he went there, by the way. Um, these are great stories that people need to hear, and somebody needs to write them and put them on paper. And like I said, I still love Black Panther. There's always room for fans. Hey, we got Game of Thrones, we got Camelot and King Arthur, we got Middle Earth. So there's always room for fantasy because everybody wants fantasy. I'm not telling you to stop that, but let's expand the stories. Let's do something else sometimes and bring a little reality into the spice because we've got the Viking stories, we got stories about the kings of England and France and other places. We got all sorts of stories about those. So why not also do that for African? Because that's something that African Americans and Africans in general would love to see on screen. Their history, their culture. So that's something else I wanted to talk about. Now, the other theme I wanted to talk about in this movie was about how tradition can get in the way. If you notice that this is something tradition and law got in the way of making a good decision in the end for Hakeem. So it's tradition and it is the law that his son must inherit the throne. That was one tradition in the movie. The other one was this: women were not allowed to have property or own anything, and all the women in here were subservient to the men by law, by rules of how they do things in this country. So I wanted to talk about that. Um, when tradition gets in the way of good thoughts, of doing good things and moving forward and progressing, tradition has to be moved out the way. Hakeem had already broken tradition by going and getting a wife in the United States. He went and got Lisa McDowell. That was his wife. He broke the tradition. He did not have an arranged marriage. He decided, because his father was like, this is how it's always been. We arrange marriages and it's for state's purposes. So he said, I'm breaking tradition. I want an American wife, and he went and got him one. But then he went right back to tradition when he tried to get his son, bring his son in, make him a prince when he wasn't ready. He wasn't trained in life to deal with the office of prince. He would have made a tragic mistake. Tradition is also this: you are not your father. You are you. Like I am me. I am not my father. I am me. That is something that you have to learn. The only father that you can even aspire to be like is God, and you ain't like him. You're made in his image, but you are you. So, this is the thing with Akeem. Akeem was becoming his father, and it didn't fit him very well. He thought it did. Then he realized, no, I'm not him. So that mold had to change. So Hakeem finds his way. Lavelle finds his way. He's not his father. He's not his uncle. He's Lavelle. He says, this is what I want. And that's what Lavelle does. Hakeem finds his way. This is who I am as king. So that's what the hero's journey in this was. It's two men finding their way and finding who they are. They were men, but they were men finding their way. Because as a man, your whole life is spent finding your way. Not, your parents tell you, growing up, you got to be this, you got to do that, you got to do this, but it's up to you to make that choice as to who you are. And that was the thing in this movie. So that's that. Now, breaking traditions that cause pain, for instance, like women not having the right to own their own barbershop or own their own business. This young woman, she wanted to own her own business, but she couldn't because she was in Samunda. She would have to leave Samunda, but she loved Samunda. It was her kingdom. But it was something that needed to be changed. The daughter that wanted to be queen, she wanted to be the leader of the country. By law and by tradition, a woman could lead the country. But it was needed to be changed because she had the ability to do both. To be queen and live and be the head of that country, she had that ability, whereas Lavelle did not, and would have been a mistake. So Tradition is straightforward. Everything has to be this way, no matter what. And often that gets us in trouble. We've seen it in history. We've seen it in the world. Uh, Kings and queens that have messed up, so on and so forth, in the real world. Um, and again, the other thing is the theme of family, of Africa. Stereotypes in Africa have gone on for years. Uh, like I said, like the elephants and the tiger, him having to get the tiger hair and all that stuff. Maybe there are places in Africa where you do that, but for the most part, no, that is not Africa. So please don't assume that this is Africa at all. Um, and also the American theme of the young man. He was a young man on the street. He wasn't Lisa McDowell, because remember, Lisa McDowell is that middle of the road character, the black family that had money. That was a little different. So here you got American characterizations all over the place. But then you realize this: black people are all types of people. I'm not sure it says Black Lives Matter, but anyway, black people are all types of people. There are different people, different types of things. It's a conglomerate of things. The one thing they share in common is they're black. That's all. So that's where we got to break the stereotypes. Stereotypical. What is a person from Africa? How they talk? What do they do? What do they eat? Those type of things. Do they all do those? Oh, that dancing is part of Africa. It is part of different styles of dancing are part of Africa. Um, but other than that, like I said, uh, breaking those stereotypes is necessary. Here's one last thing I found interesting about the movie that I found as a side note. I was listening to an interview where Eddie Murphy said that he had to include Louis Anderson because the studio said he couldn't have an all black movie. There had at least be one white character in the movie in order to make the movie. And I wonder how many movies from my time as a youth, they made movies like that. Because there were other black movies, and I guess they had to have at least one white character in it. Um, that's funny coming from Hollywood, right? Hollywood is in a big push for certain things like gay rights. They claim they're in there for equal rights for black people, but that's been a struggle for years. Black people, I think recently at the Academy Awards, Viola Davis said she's the most nominated person, and she said that's a shame. As many talented black people have come through, it's a shame that she's one of the most Oscars. It's a shame. I think it is too. I think it's shameful that she's got the most nominations and most wins of any black people. And lately, she's been winning them all. Her and Denzel Washington are about the top dogs. Like there ain't no other black people out there doing a great job. No offense to them because they're doing a good job. But then again, the Oscars are chosen by people who don't even watch the movies. Y'all probably didn't know that. They don't necessarily have to have seen the movies to decide whether this person wins an Oscar for that movie or not. That's sick to me. But again, that goes to that Hollywood thing that I have a problem with Hollywood. Only certain kind of black movies make it. Only certain type of things. Black Panther is a movie based on a white comic book creators, Africa. I'm letting y'all know that up front. Come to America is completely a black, created things. Eddie Murphy and company, they got together and they created that movie. So that was them. But like I said, Black Panther is based on, and even though it's all black, pretty much an all black cast, there was one or two black white people in the cast because it had to be, because it's Marvel. It is what it is on that. I have no problem with that either. Even with the one character they had to put in this movie because Hollywood told them they had to have one white character in there. I don't have a problem. What I have a problem is when Hollywood denies us the opportunity to do things that we should do, where they put characters in movies that shouldn't be there, like a movie about, let's say it's a movie about the white hero has got to be in a movie that's basically about China, or a white hero in a movie about Japan or India or even Africa. How they do Egypt. You hardly ever see a black actor playing an Egyptian role unless it's a background character, even though most of the people there are from Africa or dark skin or brown skin. It is not fair. And Hollywood has this game that it plays with the traditions of the people, and it has even used white actors in the role of black players with black skin, paint on their face. So they've done these things. Um, on a solid note, like I said, I want to end this by saying that Captain Coming to America was a decent film. It had some plot holes, and it had a whole lot of stuff in it that was deep. And if you watched it, you learn what that was. It's men becoming men on their own, not being their father. It was about breaking traditions that were long-standing and foolish. It was a movie that broke a lot of things in there, and it was a good film. Today, in today's world, looking for films with good plots and a good storyline and even an underlying theme, it's hard. It really is. A lot of things nowadays copy off things from in the past, so on and so forth. Coming to America was somewhat original, even though it was a sequel to another film. It had some originality to it, and that's what made it a wonderful film. So, in conclusion, y'all have a wonderful day. Thank you again. If you like what you saw here, hit that like button right there, hit subscribe, and I will see you soon. Bye bye.